Hi, I'm Ronald the Rules Lawyer, and this is part 2 of my continuing coverage of the Kineticist, the new Pathfinder 2nd Edition class, which lets you shape elements. This is Avatar: The Last Airbender if it were to have a character class in a D&D or Pathfinder game. You get to shape the 6 elements, 6, not just air, earth, fire, and water, but also wood and metal. And in part 1, I gave an overview of the Kineticist's core features, and in this part I'm going to do a combat demonstration using characters from Avatar: The Last Airbender to see what they would look like in a Pathfinder 2E game. After this, part 3 will discuss some considerations when building your own Kineticist and highlight some awesome abilities that the Kineticists can have in the system. Azula, our villain, is pursuing our main character, Aang, through the wilderness, and he has the fatigued condition. Azula is more powerful than Aang, and so she's level 11, while Aang and his friends are level 8. They stand dramatically in the middle of this abandoned town, and they begin their fight. Azula wins initiative, of course, and the first thing she does is channel her inner gate to the elemental plane of fire. Fire swirls in a 10-foot radius around her, and this lets her do her powers, her impulses as a kineticist. At level 5, she strengthened her aura and makes everyone within her aura have weakness against her fire abilities. As part of channeling her element, she can do a blast or enter a stance, and she enters her thermal nimbus stance, which gives her resistance 10 to fire and makes every enemy within her aura take fire damage. That was her first action, and with her last 2 actions, she moves twice right in front of Aang. Aang did not have his aura active, however, he had activated his ability to fly. Cyclonic Ascent lets him have a fly speed. Because he starts his turn in Azula's aura, and because her aura gives weakness to fire, he starts his turn taking 10 damage from the fire. He's going to channel his elements too, and he has links both to the plane of air and to the plane of water. So both elements are now swirling around him in a 10-foot radius. This also lets him do his impulses. At level 5, he forked the path and added water to his elements. And because he's channeling, he can do a blast now for free. He can do a blast of either element. If he were to do air, he could do electricity or slashing damage, and if he were to do water, he could do bludgeoning or cold damage. He's going to do a water blast right now because it does more damage, and because he thinks that cold damage might be more effective against her. He attacks, and at level 8, he has a plus 17 to his attack roll, and hits her armor class of 30. Because he's level 8, he gets to do 2d8 of damage instead of 1d8, and he also gets to add his strength because he's in melee. 13 damage to Azula. As it turns out, cold damage does not do extra damage to her. She had the option of her thermal nimbus being cold instead of hot, but come on, this is Azula. Next thing he does is he spends 2 actions on a stronger blast. Because he focused on the air element at level 1, he gets what's called an impulse junction, which lets him move either before or after this ability half of his speed. This works on blasts or on other air impulses that use 2 or more actions. He's also going to modify this blast by shaping it into a dagger as he slices at her. He's applying the weapon infusion feat. You get to apply 1 infusion to a blast to modify it. He also gets to add 1 of several weapon traits, and he's going to make this agile so that it is more accurate as a follow-up attack. So he swings now. Okay, that's a hit, and that was very lucky. She is a hard-to-hit foe. Because he spent 2 actions, he gets to add his constitution bonus to the damage. And this will be not a good roll, but still 11 damage. And his impulse junction kicks in, doing an air impulse. He flies upward half of his speed to get away from Azula. Opportunity attacks are not default in Pathfinder. Now arriving on the scene is Zuko, Azula's brother. He already has his aura active. Nothing prevents you from entering your aura outside of combat, and seeing his longtime sibling rival, he's going to do a 2-action blast against Azula. Okay, well, Zuko landed a critical hit, and instead of empowering his aura like his sister did, he got the critical blast effect, which is to give her persistent fire damage, and on a crit, all of his damage doubles. He doesn't add his strength, it's not melee, but because he spent 2 actions, he adds his con mod to this. And because he specializes in fire, because he's spending 2 actions on this blast, the normal d6s for fire blasts becomes d8s. And yes, if you are a Kineticist player, you will want to write different stats down on your character sheet so you know what to use when. And that will be 12 double to 24 fire damage. Now, Azula is smirking because her aura gives her resistance to fire equal to her level, so she's going to subtract 11 from that and take 13 damage. She also takes 1d6 plus 1 persistent fire damage. This is not the first time this has happened to Zuko. He's very frustrated by his sister. Aren't we a little old to be playing Tickle Brother? She has the Bon Ma skill feat. On this check, she can make him distracted during this combat, and he will be. So -2 to will and perception. He'll have to insult her back to remove the effect. Azula can now do weapon infusion herself, just like Aang. She kind of knows everything. But she has a different infusion she's going to use. She learned this at 10th level, called Chain Infusion. She spends one action to get this ready, and then she fires as her third action a single action blast against Zuko. She extends her hand. And that's a crit against her brother. She crits on a nat 14. That's the power of being 3 levels higher. As a level 11 Kineticist, she does 3 dice of damage, so this is what we double. He will take 28 fire damage. But Chain Infusion now lets her make, with the same action, another attack roll against another creature within the range of this first target. The Fire Blast has a range of 60 feet, and of course she's going to go for Aang now. It does have the multiple attack penalty, however. And this is a hit. And that's going to be 18 fire damage, plus her weakness of 5 is triggered because he's in her aura. So that would be 23 damage to Aang. However, as part of his studies of the water element, Aang has the reaction Deflecting Wave. As long as he's aware of this effect and he's not off guard, formerly known as flat-footed, he gets to use his reaction, and if it's acid, bludgeoning, fire, or slashing damage, he gets to blunt the incoming attack with a wave of water. His resistance is equal to his level, and if it's fire or acid, that doubles. So he blocks 16 of that incoming damage, and only takes 7 damage. Azula's Chain Infusion does not let her target the same creature more than once. Aang is next, and Azula takes 5 fire damage, but she resists all of it, and she is no longer on fire. Aang's turn. He's gonna alight himself on this roof on the building to the south. He's also been holding a Staff of Air, a magical item. He has the level 2 feat that lets him activate magical items. He's going to cast Gust of Wind in her direction. This has the chance of knocking her prone. Oh, that's a cool effect. She, however, gets to make a Fortitude save, and Kineticists are notoriously good at Fortitude saves. She succeeds with her 5, and starting at level 7, Kineticists can treat successes on Fortitude saves as critical successes. She stands there indomitably unaffected. Zuko is next. He's going to do a single blast of fire against Azula. Azula responds with counter elements. She has a feat that lets her, if somebody uses fire against her, she can try to counteract it. Under the remaster, her rank is 6 and his rank is 4, so she needs to roll a 1 on this counteract check to not counteract it. She succeeds easily. The next thing Zuko does is a 2-action fire ability. He basically baited her reaction with the first attack, which was pretty clever. However, he doesn't have to do fire damage. He has the weapon infusion feat also. He's a little distracted by his sister's insult. He's not doing a regular blast right now, though. He's going to do Flying Flame. It's this little fire form that he can make travel 30 feet in whatever path he wants. And everyone in the path has to make a reflex saving throw. He's doing this little trick that Kineticists should use of, if you make 2 attacks on your turn, one of them can be an attack roll and the other call for a saving throw. The one calling for a saving throw doesn't use the multiple attack penalty. The problem is that Azula is a level 11 Kineticist who now has what's like evasion. She needs to beat a 26. And that is going to critically succeed. So she takes no damage. Arriving on the scene are Aang's friends, Katara and her brother Sokka. Katara's kinetic aura is already active and providing fire resistance to people within it. Her first action brought her here, so she's going to do a big wave of water, putting her 2 hands together, a 30-foot cone. It's called Tidal Hands, and she does 4d8 bludgeoning damage with it. However, Azula gets to do a reflex save and has to beat a 26. and that will critically succeed also because she has evasion. This is one of the impulses that takes a lot out of you. It has the overflow trait, so she loses her aura at this time. Next is Sokka, and he is a fighter, and I made him one level lower than the rest of the party. Sorry, Sokka fans, but I think he's less powerful than the Benders. He spent his first action to get here. He's going to sudden charge his way, stride twice toward Azula. Because he enters her aura, which does 5 fire damage, and her aura applies weakness 5 to fire, he takes 10 fire damage right now. Thermal Nimbus is, after all, one of her fire impulses, so weakness 5. He then swings at her with one of his short swords, and that misses. It is now Azula's turn. She's going to use her Burning Jet ability to leap 40 feet in any direction. She's going to leap right next to Aang, and because she critically succeeded, the gust of wind did not affect her, so she can do this. That lets her leap up to the rooftop. And with her last action, she's going to use Weapon Infusion to shape her fire element to do physical damage. Being the brilliant tactician she is, she's going to shape it into a spear to do piercing damage against Aang. And she gets to add her strength because it's melee. And another crit by Azula. This is going to do double damage. The base damage of her blast is a d6, so it's going to be double this damage. And that is going to be 28 damage against Aang. And he's not able to use his reaction to block this because it's piercing damage. Well, Aang starts his turn in her aura, so he takes 10 fire damage right now. And his gust of wind ends. Getting his reaction back happens after these other things. He's going to take her on. He's going to do a water blast using one action against her in melee. And that misses by 1. Next, he's going to do a 2-action air ability so that he can trigger his ability to move. He's going to do Aerial Boomerang. This lets him shoot a 60-foot line of air, and at the end of the line, it spins around and does damage to creatures that end their turn in it, and it has another cool effect that we'll see later. It does potentially 5d4 slashing damage. And she gets to do a reflex save. Ooh, and that actually fails. She's going to take 11 slashing damage, a boomerang spinning in place there. Now as part of his free movement, he's going to fly over here, try to get away from her, and outside of her aura. Zuko is next. He now comes to his senses and realizes he needs to use his weapon infusion to do physical damage instead of fire damage against his sister. This is a great feat, gives you lots of flexibility, and he can shape his fire element into something like a bow and do piercing damage or any other kind of physical damage right now. Additionally, he can do more damage. Normally, range blasts don't add your strength to damage, but right now he can make it act like a bow and add half of his strength bonus. He also can treat it like a thrown weapon and add his full strength bonus, but it has a range increment of 20 feet. So he's going to get closer to get a better, more accurate shot for this, and shape his fire element into a throwing axe. This feat also gave him the option of having a 100-foot range increment to attack something from afar. So from here, he's going to do a 2-action blast and shape it, and this is a hit. Because it's not fire damage, he does not get to increase it to d8s. He gets to add his strength and his constitution, and that's going to be 10 slashing damage. Katara's next, and she's going to walk forward to get closer to her allies, and she's going to channel her element. This restores her aura, and she gets to do a free blast while channeling her element. She tries to hit Azula, and that's a miss. Sokka's next, but from off screen, someone yells his name. It's their friend Toph. She says, wait. Her kinetic aura is in effect, and she actually comes armored. There was earth covering her. Even though she's not very dexterous, this gives her sound protection. It operates like heavy armor, so she's very tough to hit. She also can sense where everyone is. She has the geologic attunement feat. Now I'm house ruling it. Normally it only operates within her kinetic aura and only gives her imprecise sense. But to be accurate with the fiction, she's going to have a precise sense and be able to sense everybody in the scene. Before you do anything, she says, she uses her Stepping Stones ability and creates a set of stairs right here that leads up to the roof. Because this costs her at least 2 actions, some of the rock is now swirling around her, giving her a bonus to AC, and she now has a godly AC of 28. Now it's Sokka's turn, and he's going to sudden charge up those stairs and go right here and attack Azula. He does take the 10 fire damage from the aura, and he attacks. This is going to be a hit. That's 17 damage from Sokka. So it's Azula's turn, and she's poised and ready. And she builds up her power in a big, blinding fireball. It's solar detonation. This costs 3 actions and overflows, makes her aura end. But it is pretty much an at-will fireball. And it can be pretty devastating. It can blind enemies as well temporarily. So there it is. And it does 76 fire damage, and because she's a specialist in fire, and it's at least 2 actions, it's going to be 78 fire damage. And that's going to be 30 fire damage. Now they have to do reflex saving throws. Katara tries to avoid it, and that is a critical failure. She has to beat a 30, so she's going to spend her hero point, and that's better. So she would take 30 fire damage, but she's protected by the aura, which gives her some resistance. But she also has the same reaction that Aang does, deflecting wave, and she uses that now and blocks 16 of it. She takes 14 damage. And she also becomes blinded until the start of Azula's next turn. Aang also tries to avoid the effects, and that succeeds. And he also uses deflecting wave, so this should negate it entirely. He takes no damage. But he is dazzled, since he did not critically succeed, so it makes it a little harder for him to target things. Zuko makes a saving throw, and fails, and takes 30 fire damage, but he's within Katara's aura, so he's going to take 26. Sokka makes a saving throw, and fails, so he would take 30 fire damage, but he's in Azula's aura, which will give him weakness 5, so that's going to be 35 damage for Sokka. Azula, of course, needs to save against her own effect, and she's going to succeed, and because she's level 11 or higher, she's going to critically succeed. She has no effect. Also, Sokka is blinded. So that was a thing, and Azula's aura ends at this time. Aang is next, and he wants to help his allies surround Azula, so he's going to use 4 winds now. This is an ability that lets him move 4 willing creatures, including possibly himself, who are within 30 feet, up to half of their speed. And because it uses at least 2 actions, he can, for free, fly back to where he was next to Azula. He can choose to do this free movement before or after the ability. So he summons whirling air to propel his allies forward, but they have to be willing. First, he has to target them because he's dazzled. He has to roll a 5 or higher on each of these rolls, and he does. And Aang pointedly looks at Zuko and says, "This only helps my friends," as some air appears right next to Zuko. Katara is blinded, so she treats every square as difficult terrain. This is as far as she can go. Aang is nudging Sokka to the south, for some reason. And Zuko reluctantly agrees to go forward and moves right here. With Aang's last action, he summons the boomerang back. This is part of aerial boomerang. He can call that boomerang back towards him, and it affects the same line with an attack. It's a actually really cool ability, but Azula's probably going to avoid it. Let's see what happens. She has to beat a 26, and she does with a critical success. Next is Zuko, and he's right next to his sister, so he's thinking of attacking her with fire now because her aura is not up, so she cannot use counter elements, and she doesn't have her resistances. He's going to do a 2-action melee fire blast, but he's going to move here to flank first, and hopefully he will connect. And that hits, and that's going to do 2d8 plus 7, 17 fire damage to Azula. So she got her big attack off, but she's a little vulnerable at this time. Katara says, "I can't see!" She's groping around herself, and Toph orders her, "Go, help Sokka, he needs you, do it!" So Katara reluctantly goes up these stairs. It's all difficult terrain. She moves right here, and that took 2 actions. And with her last action, as someone with the water element, she has some healing abilities. She's going to try to use Ocean's Bomb on her brother, but she can't see him, so she's going to have to roll an 11 or higher on this check. And she succeeds, so she's going to heal him 4d8, so she heals Sokka 16 health, and also gives him resistance 5 to fire for a minute. She can't use this again on him for 10 minutes. Toph's bonus to armor class ends. She's going to spend her whole turn walking up the steps she made to go right here. And because she did not sustain her stepping stones, they disappear. Sokka, with his first action, tries to intimidate Azula and says, "We got you surrounded." First he tries to target her, succeeds, and then tries to intimidate her. And a 24 is not enough. He would have needed a 26. Then he's going to use his double slice feat, where he attacks with both weapons at the same time at his full attack bonus. And because he's blinded, he still has to roll to target. He might hit with either of them. And one of them hits for 18 damage. Azula's next, and they are no longer dazzled or blinded as her turn starts. The first thing she does is to channel her element. She could do a free blast right now, but no, she's going to get her free stance, her thermal nimbus again. Her aura naturally gives enemies weakness to her fire impulses, and thermal nimbus actually gives them fire damage and gives her resistance. So she's going to do that. And next, she's going to do 2 actions to do Flying Flame. And this is what her brother did before, but she's going to do it to much greater effect. She has a 30-foot path that will go through all of these enemies. For her, it normally does 66, but because she is a specialist, this will do 68 fire damage and 32 fire damage. And they're each going to make saving throws. So Sokka's first. He will not succeed, and he also is in her aura, so he's going to take 37 damage. But he's also in Katara's aura, so he's going to take 33 damage. Katara is next, and critically fails, which is bad. That means this is going to become 64 damage, 69 within Azula's radius. But Katara has her reaction to deflect it with a wave, so that's going to be 53 damage against Katara. Toph is next, and she's going to critically fail, and she's going to do her hero point and make that a regular failure. So she's going to take 37 fire damage. Well, 33 fire damage. Zuko will succeed and take 17 fire damage. He does have a reaction right now, though, called Volcanic Escape, where if he would take damage from an enemy within his aura, he can do a leap of 15 feet right now, damage Azula 1d6 fire, and that's going to do nothing to Azula, and because she resists fire. It does have overflow, so Zuko's aura ends, but it does get him into a safer place. Azula, in order to reach Aang, will need to have it path through herself, so she's going to do a reflex save. She critically succeeds because of evasion, and Aang is going to roll a natural 20. There you go. So that was a very strong use of that ability. Next is Aang. He's going to take 10 fire damage at the start of his turn, and he's going to do a water blast against Azula. But he's only going to spend 1 action. And why do that? Your most accurate attack is your first. Why not use both actions to get that extra con damage? Well, we'll see. So his first attack is a miss. And the second thing he does is he does an air blast. He's going to try to do slashing damage with this, spending 2 actions, and this will likely not hit. However, it doesn't have to hit for him to get the impulse junction effect. He's going to move 15 feet here. And he's going to yell scatter to his friends and Zuko and say, we can't surround her. It's not safe. Next is Zuko, who's going to channel his element. Now he has a choice. When you channel your element, you get to do 1 blast for free. However, it's a 1-action version, and you can't apply infusions again on it. So he doesn't take that opportunity, and he uses his next 2 actions to make a single stronger blast against Azula. And he's going to make it do piercing damage with weapon infusion. And that is a hit. And it was as a thrown weapon, so that's going to do 14 piercing damage to Azula. And next is Katara. And she has an ability from the water element called Torrent in the Blood, which lets her create a healing wave of water that splashes across a 30-foot cone. And she's going to do that right now to help her allies. This is going to heal them 4d8, and that is 16 health restored to them, so goody. And that's also an overflow ability. They can't benefit from this again for 10 minutes. So that costs 2 actions, and with her last action, she's going to channel elements again. So she's not scattering. She wants to create this aura again to protect her allies. And she's going to take advantage of that free blast and try to attack Azula. And that misses. Okay, Toph is next, and she's going to take 6 fire damage. And she has this earth ability that lets her create a tremor and try to knock people over. But Azula's a tough nut. It would target her fortitude save, and kineticists are going to be almost never affected by those. So Toph is going to move over here and do her composite impulse. Toph recently learned metal bending and has access to both earth and metal powers. And there are some powers that combine 2 elements, and this is called whirling grindstone. She creates a spinning grindstone made of flint, and it appears right here, and it's going to attack Azula. So we resolve that first, and that's a hit. So that's going to do 4d6 slashing damage. It also does 3d6 fire. She resists 11 of that, but also it continues to spin. Any character can sharpen a metal weapon against this grindstone with an action. Sokka can do that, and Azula doesn't fight with weapons, so this is a pure win for the party. And because this composite impulse has the earth trait, Toph gets to activate her impulse junction and get +1 to AC. Next is Sokka, who will take 6 fire damage at the start of his turn, and he's gonna sharpen one of his short swords and now attack Azula with a power attack. He has that feat. And this is a hit. So power attack adds a die of damage, and he's going to add 4 because of the whirling grindstone. And that's going to be 21 damage, and that brings Azula down to 6 hit points. And that's Sokka's turn. Now it's Azula. And she holds up her arms and says, "Well, look at this. Enemies and traitors all working together. I'm done. I know when I'm beaten. You got me. A princess surrenders with honor." And because she took a rogue archetype, she rolls deception for initiative, and all enemies are off guard or flat-footed to her, and she aims a single-action electricity blast at Katara. Azula has forked the path and knows how to do air blasts. She rolls, and that's a critical hit, so it does double this damage. 26, knocking Katara to the ground. And with her last 2 actions, she does burning jets and leaps away, and because she's high enough level, she can stay in midair. Sokka attends to his sister, and Zuko, meanwhile, also knows Solar Detonation. He's going to spend 3 actions and overflow. He can place it within 60 feet. 36 possible fire damage. However, Azula sees his brother using a fire ability and counteracts it. So Zuko loses his aura. Aang also knows a composite impulse called Rising Hurricane. 3 actions, overflow, that uses air and water to create a tempest and lift people up into the air. It can be within 120 feet in a 30-foot diameter, and then after lifting them up, it slams them down in a torrent of water. So because it is an air impulse, he can move for free 15 feet before it, and he tries to lift Azula up in the air. She makes a fortitude save and needs to beat a 26, and she critically succeeds. Aang loses his aura. Toph is also going to use an overflow ability. She knows Weight of Stone. She creates a cloud of crashing boulders that descend from the sky. She places it right here, and Azula gets to make a reflex save. And that's going to be a critical success because of evasion. And Azula manages to get away. So that was the combat demo. I hope you enjoyed this demonstration and revisiting our beloved characters from the Avatar series. I will, in part 3, do some analysis of what we learned about kineticists from this combat, and look at some of the choices you can make as a kineticist, highlighting some pretty awesome abilities in the class. If you enjoyed this combat demonstration, it's not the only one I've done on my channel. There will be a playlist at the end of the video, and also in the video description. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also support my Patreon, where you can see the 2.5-hour stream where me and other people from my Discord server react to the Kineticist class and go through a lot of its abilities. Also, by supporting the Patreon, you'll get 7-day early access to most of my videos. Lastly, join my Discord community if you haven't yet to play Pathfinder or talk with other like-minded people. So that's it. I have been Ronald, the Rules Lawyer, and I'll see you next time.